I know it's what we're doing is totally against any rules about attention. So, but still we try to push you on, and I will try to build on your next great lecture. So I'm a clinical psychologist. I work with adult people. I work in the Center for Mental Health of Adults in Health Center Koper, but I'm also a sports psychologist, and that's why how I joined Tina and this group. So I'll be taking more psychosocial characteristic and perspective of ADHD. Okay, so first we'll start with why sport is good for people with ADHD and why people with ADHD are good for sport. Because the information tells us that actually among the professional athletes there are more people with ADHD than compared to the general population. So that means that people who have ADHD tend to perform good in sport. And we see also why this is so during this lecture. Also, for example, in baseball league in United States, they saw, for example, they were measuring in 1 year that like 8.4% of athletes in this baseball league have medication. So you know, if you're a professional athlete, you have to have this exemption of medication that you are not, required, like that you have that you don't have doping, so that you are expelled from the doping list for this stimulant medication. Then you have to have a diagnosis and report it in before, right? So we can see that this is quite high percentage. And also in elite college athletes, there are 7% that were taking stimulant medication. So we see that even those who are taking stimulant medication in adult athletes is a higher percentage than in general population. But we also know that not all people who have diagnosis with ADHD are taking medication, right? So we assume that there are even more in elite sport. Okay, wrong side. So as we see, the sports is a very good environment for everybody who has ADHD, and because joining it can have like many positive effects. Already Arnea said that one part of these effects can be that you have better identity, more self-esteem, because sport can be something that gives you positive feedback and so on. But one point where this can be also good is that part of ADHD is also hyperfocus. It means that it's not just deficit in attention, but sometimes people with ADHD, when they have something very interesting, that something that really drags them in, really, then they can have like hyperfocus. For example, something that is boring to you, you cannot hold it for like 5 minutes. But it's something that's like very interesting. For example, I don't know, a teenager starts to read Harry Potter, then he can read it like the whole book in, I don't know, half a day. And we will not regulate sleep or even feel that he or she is thirsty or hungry or anything like that. Okay, so many people with ADHD also know about hyperfocus. So, and in sports, as we will see, this can be triggered more often because this really high intensity situation during competition, for example. So also many athletes with ADHD say that sports gives them the edge and they give them healthy outlet for their symptoms to be played out. Okay, so, but as we heard before, people with ADHD can be different, right? And can be difficult to manage, there's more like difficult behavior and so on. So for this that we take this positive possibility for people with ADHD, that they can perform very good in sport, then we also know, we should know like how to treat them, how to help them to perform better. And coaches are also like in general life often like more, they can have like more effects than parents of adolescent children and so on with ADHD. So because usually when somebody goes to sport, they can really develop a special relationship with their coaches. So coaches can have like very important role in managing ADHD. So it's good to know that people, youngsters with ADHD are not uncoachable. but they just need different type of coaching, and we'll try to give you this information. They have people with ADHD can also have like very much of like negative information during their childhood. So we all know Michael Phelps, the most decorated Olympian in all our era, has ADHD. He said it himself, but also here are then many other athletes, just those who said it themselves that they have ADHD, right? And we see they are just all elite athletes, right? So how many others are that they don't say it, and so on. So with this we can see, yes, you can work very well in sport and have ADHD. So why sport? Why sport can be so good, good for people with ADHD? So one is, as we saw before, heard before, that part of ADHD is hyperactivity. So it could be like excess of energy, or like fluctuation of energy, that you really put the energy quite impulsively out of yourself. So sport can regulate it. It can regulate energy during the sport and reduce restlessness and some other common symptoms of ADHD. So engaging physical activity can help individuals with ADHD to channel their energy in constructive matter. So this is also where sport can help us. Okay, so here I want some quotes that they are not really in line with this, but okay. We can also send you the lecture then to your addresses if you give it to us, to see how athletes are saying how sports help them. And so by their own words, how it was helpful for them to be part of the sport. Some are those who were on medication and some without. Okay. So in comparison to diagnosis of children, so I work in the part when we diagnose adults. So this is those who were not diagnosed as children, right? So they were missed during their childhood, before they were 17 years old, okay? So, and what we do? So usually they come to us as a clinical psychologist before they went to psychiatrist, so that psychiatrists can have larger, bigger picture of their functioning, because as Anea said before, we don't have such a full heterogeneous information as we do for children. So, and for adults, we have quite special procedure, quite intensive procedures. There are some questionnaires that are specific for ADHD. One that is used the most is DIVA. So it's diagnostic interview for people for ADHD for adult people. And in this questionnaire, we are checking the symptoms that are now, if they are present like now in the adulthood, but also if they were present in the childhood. So, and this comparison is very important, that you see that it's not just something that develops now, but that was already present before in their life. Then we try to do quite some neuropsychological tests, because we know that what is difficult for people with ADHD is attention, but not necessarily the whole attention. So we have different parts of the attention that could be worse with people with ADHD, and this is divided and sustained attentions, and so we do tests about that. Then we also have so-called executive functions that are mostly connected with our frontal lobe functioning that Anea described before so well. And so we have also many tests that we try to test executive functions. So this is like very important. But even more than this, so we are asking ourselves, okay, why were these people missed before? Because now we are quite good with diagnosis. It's not so much stigmatized as it was before. Parents decide to go to psychiatrists earlier than they were any time before. So and usually it is that they are really high functioning ADHD and very intellectually capable. That's why we also do, because for example, we can do all these tests and we can see like clinical fluctuations, but just the results don't give you really the perception of what is doing with these people. So we also test general intelligence with this very comprehensive test, the named Flexter test, where there are 4 indexes. And part of this is also that we measure working memory, for example. We also measure visual spatial possibilities and speed of attention speed, let's say. So, and we see, for example, that they can have other factors in general intelligence like very high, even like, way above the average. But then we see, for example, that working memory is like just in average. And with this we see that actually their working memory is not allowing them to fulfill their whole possibilities, capabilities that they have on an intellectual level, right? And they feel it subjectively, right? That's why they say, okay, I couldn't listen, I couldn't function, because they feel that they can do more, but just because part of their capabilities, they didn't support the other capabilities that they have, okay? And so because of that, we are looking for these differences inside the functioning that can give us more information about if somebody really has ADHD or not. So here, I don't know why the slides are a little bit shortened, but so we also check personality, and we also check emotional state, especially impulsivity and reactivity. So like how stable is emotion, and also because, as we heard before, there are quite a lot of comorbidities, and there's a lot of anxiety, for example, and a lot of depression also combined with ADHD. So we also have to check this, but also this is important for the psychiatrist to know what kind of medication to use. For example, if you have borderline personality and ADHD, you will not use stimulants in any way, right? Because it's really the huge possibility for developing addiction. Okay? So that's why we really try to figure the person as whole when we do it in an adult setting. Okay, good. And so why? So this lecture is part of our project that we try to help adolescents that have ADHD, and we try to help it through physical movement and through mindfulness. And why we focus on adolescents? Because this is a phase of very big maturation. So this development of frontal cortex is very high in this age, and that's why, for example, during puberty or early adolescence, we can even see the worsening of the symptoms for some time. And also this is then a time, if we're looking more for psychosocial perspective, we also know that this is the time, the period of the maturation, that we are prone to have more peer connection, and that this socialization is more important to us. And so if my reactions are less congruent with social norms, or I'm too quick, or I'm too quickly angered, or more impulsive, or I don't comprehend things as much as I can, this is then part of our life period that it could be very sensitive to us, right? So that we can feel even more fish out of the water than perhaps we did before. Okay, so that's why this period of life is very important for us, and that's why we try to focus on it in our project. If we try to move now in the part of the sport, what can we see about youngsters, adolescents that have ADHD during training? For example, we can see that they complete work in rushes, that they are more like messy, they are more incomplete in tasks. For example, you will give them an exercise, and they will not really do it carefully, but just something in between, just so that it will be really quick. So they lose track of time. You give them somewhere to swim, or they count the laps, and they will forget just where they stand. They don't know how many repetitions they already did. They are, constantly talking with other peers, with other athletes, or just blurring something out, and so sometimes they're just, in their zone, and it's hard to get them started. They can be very impatient, or daydreaming. It's very frequent that we forget equipment, that you take them to the competition and you just forget so many things. So it's always good as a coaches to have a plan B with somebody who has ADHD. So they could be often hard to discipline, they could something to push the limits of the coach, They can also frustrate the coach. You can give them something, explanations. They won't really listen to you. They cannot, but then you will see that they weren't really listening to you. So they can wait in turn when they start to show something, anything like that. So here are some things that we can see that can be more difficult for sport. But on the other hand, ADHD, as we saw, can also have some pluses, so it's not all bad, right? So, for example, they can be a really good leader. So, as Linnea said before, it's good to have in mind that ADHD is also a kind of spectrum. So, in some people will be more expressed, and some people will be more expressed about this attentional part, and some people will be more expressed hyperactive part. And if all people who have ADHD will be the same, we will not miss them in the childhood, right? So we have to have in mind that these symptoms express in different ways. So, for example, this is about sensitivity and empathy. This is one factor that, for example, some people with ADHD have quite high. They can be very sensitive for needs to others. Maybe that they cannot understand what they are feeling and what they are sensing, but they have really high factor of empathy, for example, and sensitivity to others. Again, some other, they can perhaps sense something, but they will not know why, or can be just more in their own, thoughts or their own reactions or emotions, and they will not know what to do with that. So, but as we see in sport, they can be very good leader. They can be very charming, very interesting, because they will have merry interest, right? Because their mind can be very quick and integrating with many things that they stand around them. So that they focus sometimes on this one, then on this one, and this on this one, then this one, and they can have a huge knowledge in a way, but not in the regular way, regular school system. So they can be very interesting from that part. And they can have very good also communication skills. They can be very funny, charismatic, also have empathy. But usually one good part of them is that they can be very curious, because usually word for them is very interesting, because they perceive so many things that are happening outside them. And because of this curiosity, they can be very enthusiastic as well. And if they are interested in the sports, for example, that you are teaching, they can be very good at this sport, and they can really put huge effort to it. Because they keep it active, they can be very energetic, able to hyper-focus, as I said before. They can have good observation skills, because they can scan a lot of environment very quickly, and because of that, they can be also very adaptable to the environment. And if they're really into something, they can have very good psychological resilience and also determination to do things. Okay, and so now to focus more to broader psychosocial functioning, here are just a few examples of what we mean by these notions. So, emotions that are common in ADHD is emotion dysregulation, low frustration tolerance, and difficulties with coping, not just some difficulties with coping, not just with negative emotions, but whenever there is a high emotions in the area or inside them, okay? So also with positive emotions, so then they can be over enthusiastic. So this is something that we can see in general and in sport. So we know that also in sport it's very common that when you engage with something that you like and you put a lot of energy in your sport, you can get mad, frustrated, you could cry during games. Also those who are not ADHD do that. And sports can provoke additional emotions. And for athletes with ADHD, this could be even more prominent. So, for example, if they make something like a small mistake, they can get flooded with emotions, and they can have very quick reaction from that. So they have less ability to react to their own emotions if they're using reasoning and intellectual processing, where something floods them with emotions. If we go now to behavior, of course, if we have weak regulation of emotions, then this is also observable in our behavior. For example, they can go to more risky behaviors, as Maja described before. They can include like substance abuse, more like physical and verbal aggression, more traffic accidents, and more personal conflicts. And as we know, adolescents with ADHD take more risk like in daily life. It's not because they will be bad or something like that, but just because it's interesting for them and they don't think about it too much. Okay, let me just show you. Okay, we will see from Super Bowl some just short clips that show what the reaction of somebody with ADHD can be.
What happened is, on the fumble, he was not in the game. Noah Gray went in, and he had to the fumble.
Okay, so it's actually just like very emotional, quick reaction that the player goes against his own coach because he wants to go in the game. If we go now to the second one, we'll see how the coach reacts. So coach understands this athlete.
He caught me off balance. I wasn't watching. Cheap shot, but that's all right. He did good. He was really coming over, just put me in, I'll score, you know, so that's really what it was. Well, I love that. I mean, it's not the first time, so I appreciate it.
So the coach said that he appreciates that he's so fully again, so emotional, that he just wants to go in the game, that he wants to have the team and everything. And he said, okay, this is not the first time, so we know this repeatable behavior, but we also see now what the athlete says about the coach, the third one.
The broadcast showed you having a heated exchange with Coach Reed.
So heated. People are all over this. I mean, I get it.
You crossed the line. I think we can both agree on that.
I can't get that fired up to the point where I'm bumping Coach and it's getting him off balance and stuff.
I mean, let's be honest. The yelling in his face, too, is over the top. I think there's better ways to handle this.
I love Coach Reed. Coach Reed knows how much I love to play for him. I'm not playing for anybody else but Big Red. If he calls it quits this year, I'm out there with him, man.
He ain't calling quits. Come on.
Okay, so we see that actually he has such a huge respect for his coach because the coach understands him, that he is willing to quit the game if the coach, if this will not be his coach anymore. Yeah, so we see that if you understand your athletes, thanks Tina, your athletes with ADHD, that this could be like very good relationship that can help in both sides. But so it's good to set boundaries, but also to understand when these hitting emotions and behavior can come. Okay? So in sport, they can cry, they can yell, they can grab things in the moment, they can be like over-aggressive in their playing style, also like very fearlessness in it. So, but on the other hand, because they can adjust to this and because these high emotions can give them hyper-focus, they can also have the ability to try really good under pressure. And many of them described that like, oh, training was so boring, I couldn't really cope with that. It was, oh, okay, I just need to go through it. But when I was in the competition, it was a totally different game, right? Because this energy really gave me the possibility to engage my full capacity. And there is one football goalkeeper that he has beside the ADHD. He also has Tourette syndrome, and he was goalkeeper for Manchester United. And he described that he was one of the best of predicting also for 11, how do you say, 11 meters. For the shoot from 11 meters in football. I don't know how to spell it and how to say it in English. That because for him everything just slowed down, and he can see the actions of the other football player and how he will put himself in the field like differently, and that actually this gave him the possibility to react better than any other goalkeeper. So they can have really good reaction time if they really engage, but if they will be like more daydreaming, they'll be like too slow, right? But so it's important to engage them. Okay, in part of cognition. So as we said before, problem is working memory, and also that they need a constant gratification so that you keep their cognition flowing, right? So they'll be constantly in the attention. And as we heard before, this part of this can be also the dopamine deficiency. So because of that, it's not good to go with long-term goals with them, but they need, for example, rewards and day-to-day manifesting their skills and to give them day-to-day support in a way. So in the sport, this part of planning, organization, they have to be learned, right? So we have to take this into consideration. But we also see, because we know that our brain is plastic through our whole lifespan, and during the childhood and puberty, this is even more flexible than later in our life, in adulthood, and even more, of course, when we'll be very old. So it's good to teach them things like that as soon as possible. So it's good to teach them how to manage time, how to set goals, how to make decisions effectively, and they can learn that. And this will be later more the topic of Petra. And because of this cognition difficulties, then this can also cause the athletes to give up too quickly to just learning some skill or even to do sport, and to be reluctant to procrastinate. We know what's procrastination, just fading away time. For example, you just do, I don't know, like social media, and you just go and just hours passing and you're just not doing anything but just sleeping on social media. We have to have them in line with taking their organizational skills. Okay, here are some other areas that could be hard for athletes with ADHD. For example, as we said before, in one way they can be like very fearlessness, but quite often they also have the different part. They're too anxious about certain things, and they can go turning their minds over and over again about just some small mistake they did. They quite often do that. So then it's good that we recognize this and that we learn them how to stop this negative self-process, especially if this is combined with a lower self-esteem. Then they will have more tendency to deal with this negative self-talk that is in now more anxiety. They will have problem calming down when they're annoyed or angry. By my experience, they're quite often reacting to something that it doesn't seem fair to them. For example, if somebody is breaking the rule, that could be something that is really important things for them. They will just say, that's just not fair, that just wasn't fair. And it would be really hard for them to letting go something that it wasn't done fairly to, not necessarily just to themselves, but also to some other athletes. So they can be more sensitive to offense or criticism, or if somebody is yelling on them. So it's good to have right communications and to learn that. So it's heavier for them to wait, so they can feel like very urgency to do something that they want and to master a skill and something like that. They can easily feel bored or distracted at practice, so it's important for coaches to make training like creative and very interesting and dynamic, and with that it will be easier for them to follow the sport. Okay, about personality. So they can have lower self-esteem than their peers and less solid identities, so that they're not so sure who they really are. But we also see, because they can be more sensitive, they usually are, that they can feel like more remorse for even small things. This can be also then connected with more rejection. And for example, they will have less tendency to go back to some social group or something like that, and they will feel rejected. So in sport, as it was said before, sport can really boost their self-esteem and confidence. So when they see that they can accomplish goals, that they receive praise from coaches and other teammates, they can really experience this like personal improvement, and it can contribute to their positive self-image and for the development of their identity. So social relationships can be like impaired with adolescents with ADHD, as I said before, because in one way they can be like too sensitive, in the other way some can be with less empathy, and they can jump to the conclusion, they can jump to the relationship, they can push too hard sometimes, and because of that they can be more unpopular with other children and become like too frequently isolated. So even like 80% of them in some research say that they have experience of peer rejection, and they have fewer friends than those who don't have ADHD. Okay. So also in school this can be even more prominent, and that's why for those who have this in school, the sport can be even more important. So the team, especially team sports, provide opportunities for social interaction and cooperation, and at the beginning they can be a little bit too handful for coaches, but they can learn with time how to cooperate with others and give like very positive reinforcement also from other teammates, especially when they have rules, and that also other teammates see where they can add to the team as a whole. And through this interaction they can develop social skills and improve their relationships. Skip this one. Okay, so if we go just to really like practical side. So what you as a coaches can do for your adolescent with ADHD. So first is a combination of understanding the unique needness, providing appropriate accommodations to training, process, and fostering the environment that promotes their success. So this sensation of success is very important for them. You should be patient, and it's very good to use a sense of humor and to accept and adjust expectations that you have towards your athletes. So of course it's good to know that ADHD teens are more challenging than those without. So here are some other suggestions that can help you when dealing with teenagers with ADHD in sport. So especially at the beginning, it's good to have an individualized plan and to see how you can support them individually. As I said before, everybody is different, and especially with adolescents with ADHD, this is even more prominent. So it's good that you know them individually and that you evaluate what are their good and bad sides. And regarding this, also to have more flexible coaching style. So even though they are like quite over the board and they need novelty, they need dynamics and everything like that, for them it's like very important to have structure, to have consistent routine and to have structure. So it's a bit like, it seems like two like different sides, but actually for this that they can really do well, they actually need this structure and then learn to adjust to it. Because problems with attention, we have to break tasks into manageable steps. So nothing too big, nothing too long, and also with that, if there are smaller steps, they can also get more quickly positive appraisal. Instructions should be like very clear and concise, which also follows hand in hand with this consistent routine and structure. And usually, this I didn't say before, but very often this visual spatial capability, it's much better with adolescents with ADHD than with the others. So this is also why they can be very good in team sports, because actually their scanning of the environment can be better than others. Because of this capability, they often exceed at these visual aids can be like very helpful. For example, if you're training them, give them more visual like photos, videos of them, so with this they can relate more and it can help them more to evaluate themselves. Okay, we had similar before that we have shorter and more frequent breaks. Very active participation and engagement is really good to give them some space, some place in the team, so then they have their own responsibility, but again not too big so that it will not overwhelm them and exceed their desire to prove themselves and to be responsible. It's very important for them to have variety and novelty and really regular feedback and communication with them. it's good to have goal setting, progress tracking. Probably Petra will talk about that a little bit more. And it is also proven that mindfulness and mental skills training can be very helpful also with managing stress and pressures. We know that things like mindfulness and also certain types of meditation can increase the thickness of frontal lobe and also the connection between neurons in the frontal lobe. And it seems this could be important for people with ADHD. Okay, so as we said before, teamwork is like very important for athletes with ADHD because this social part of their life can be something that they're struggling with, and they can, from teamwork, they can really learn a lot from it. So for one part, team sports are more suggested for them, but as we'll see later, not necessarily so. It's important for them to follow directions. For example, it would be hard for some coaches to take time to take care for this kind of youngsters, but as we saw before from Phelps, right, somebody recognized his potential and took him in regardless of his ADHD and managed to deal with him as an exceptionally good athlete. And it's also good to help, for example, to arrange your athlete with ADHD some pre-practice training, for example, to explain the rules, to get used to the rules before the inclusion with the team and playing with the team. Okay, so as I said before, task focus, so it's important for them they have a job as part of the team, so that they can feel like important, and also that, for example, you can use their energy. For example, we had for one example here that the girl had a really higher hyperactivity, but also this meant that she can use her energy later in the game. So where everybody else was tired, she stepped in the game and, for example, she gave the very last goal in this competition, and with that also her success and position in the team came more up. So as I said before, team sports can be very important, but also because some people with ADHD can have more problem with shift making and with adjusting to others. Some sports, individual sports, can be like very important for them as well. For example, gymnastics, swimming is one of those, track and field, martial arts, fencing, these are proven to be also very good for athletes with ADHD. Okay, so just for conclusion, it's been a long presentation, but so important is that you get to know your athlete with ADHD and to look individually to each one of them. So because, for example, some cannot show as many behaviors in school as at home as they do in sport, or quite the opposite also. So it's essential to consider individual preferences for each one of your athletes and to get an activity regime that is in line with their needs. And so try to be creative, encouraging, and give as much as positive feedback as you can, and to have everything in small packages, with small and intensive packages, and basically you should do just fine with them. So that's about it from my part.